In a fear and drought-stricken land, the most righteous man in his generation, and in fact the whole earth, emerged destined to do Adonai's work as if Adonai himself was on earth. Elijah would stand up to kings, mock their gods, and perform many miracles with Adonai's help. Elijah, determined for greatness, would ascend to heaven in a fiery chariot, pulled by horses of fire. That man is me, and this is my unforgettable story. With the confidence of Adonai, I said to King Achav, "As Adonai, the God of Israel, lives, before whom I stand, there will be neither rain nor dew in the years ahead, unless I say so." The king's eyes grew wide, and he was shocked to his core. Before the king could say anything, the word of Adonai came to me again, saying, "Leave here, turn to the east, and hide in Vadi Crete, near the Yarden. You are to drink from the stream, and I have ordered the ravens to feed you there." Without acknowledging the king, I went and acted according to the word of Adonai. I went and lived in Vadi Crete near the Yarden, a peaceful, quiet place where the only sounds were birds chirping and the steam flowing. The ravens brought me bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, just like Adonai said, and I drank from the stream. After a while, the stream dried up, because there was no rain in the land. Before I go on with the next part of the story, there is something crucial you must understand. At this time, I was not just a man, but the most righteous man on the whole earth, a vessel through whom God's voice resonated. My relationship with Adonai had grown profoundly intimate, to the point where the words I declared felt as if God himself had spoken them. You see, I'm the reason Israel is going through a drought and a famine. I'll explain more later. Let's continue for now. After I had lived in that haven for a while, the word of Adonai came to me and said, "Get up, go to Zarephath, a village in Zidon, and live there. I have ordered a widow there to provide for you." Without hesitation, I set out and went to Zarephath. After a mile journey, I reached the gate of the city, and there I saw a widow gathering sticks. Starving and thirsty from the journey, I called out to her, "Please bring a little water in a container for me to drink." As she was going to get it, I also called after her, "Please bring me a piece of bread in your hand." She stopped, her shoulders tensing with fear and despair. Turning back to me, she answered, "As Adonai your God lives, I have nothing baked, only a handful of meal in a pot and a little oil in the jug. Here I am, gathering a couple sticks of wood so that I can go and cook it for myself and my son. After we have eaten that, we will die." Her words pierced through me, a stark reminder of the severe famine ravaging the land. This woman, preparing for what she believed to be her and her son's last meal, embodied the silent cry of countless souls suffering in the drought. After suppressing my emotions, I said to her, "Don't be afraid. Go and do what you said, but first use a little of it to make me a small loaf of bread and bring it out to me. After that, make food for yourself and your son. For this is what Adonai, the God of Israel, says, the pot of meal will not get used up, nor will there fail to be oil in the jug, until the day Adonai sends rain down on the land." With faithfulness, she went and acted according to what I had said, and their household had food to eat for a long time, just as Adonai said. The pot of meal did not get used up, nor did there fail to be oil in the jug, in fulfillment of the word of Adonai spoken through me, because she had given to me what she didn't have. A while later, the son of the woman whose house I was staying in fell ill. His condition worsened with each passing day, until finally his heart stopped beating while he was lying in his mother's lap. The room was filled with the unbearable stillness of death. Sobbing, the widow turned to me, her face masked with anguish. "What do you have against me, you man of God? Did you come to me just to remind me how sinful I am by killing my son?" Her words cut deep, a raw expression of her grief and despair. "Give me your son," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of sorrow and determination. Gently, I took the lifeless child from her lap, feeling the weight of his still body. I carried him upstairs to the room where I was staying and laid him on my own bed. Kneeling beside the bed, my heart heavy with desperation, I cried out to Adonai, Adonai, my God, have you brought also this misery on the widow I'm staying with by killing her son? My voice echoed in the silence, a plea from the depths of my soul. I stretched myself out on the child 3 times, each time pouring my hope and faith into my actions. Adonai, my God, please, let this child's soul come back into him, I cried out, my voice breaking with emotion. Then, in the stillness, I felt a shift. Adonai heard my cry, and the child's soul returned to him. His eyes fluttered open, and he took a shuddering breath. Joy surged through me as I scooped him up and carried him back downstairs. Tears of joy streamed down the widow's face as I placed her son in her arms. See, your son is alive, I said, my heart swelling with gratitude. Overwhelmed with relief and happiness, the woman looked at me with shining eyes. Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of Adonai that you speak is the truth. After 3 long years, the word of Adonai came to me and said, Go, present yourself to Achav, and I will send rain down on the land. Only with my determination and God's guidance, I went and presented myself to Achav. The famine in Shomron had become severe. As I was continuing my journey, almost reaching the city, ways away Achav called Ovadia, who was in charge of the palace. But Ovadia was different from everyone else in the land. He greatly revered Adonai. For example, when Isabel was murdering Adonai's prophets, Ovadia took 100 prophets, hid them in 2 caves, 50 in each, and supplied them with food and water. In desperation, Achav said to Ovadia, Go throughout the land and check all the springs and wadis. Maybe we can find grass somewhere so that we can keep the horses and mules alive and not lose all the animals. So they divided between them the territory to be visited. Achav went one way by himself, and Ovadia went another way by himself, looking everywhere for food for the animals. As Ovadia was on the road, I suddenly appeared before him. His eyes widened in shock and disbelief, and he immediately fell on his face, overwhelmed by my presence. Is it really you, my lord Eliyahu? He asked, his voice trembling in awe. Yes, it is, I replied firmly. Go, tell your master, I am here. Obadiah's face dropped with disbelief. He started to tremble uncontrollably, and he quickly replied, How have I sinned, that you would hand your servant over to Achav to kill me? He pleaded, his voice rising with desperation. As Adonai your God lives, there can't be a single nation or kingdom where my master hasn't sent to search you out, and in each kingdom or nation where they said, He isn't here, he made them take an oath that they hadn't found you. Now you say, Go tell your master, Eliyahu is here. Why? He'll kill me. After hearing what he said, and knowing Adonai so greatly, I replied, As Adonai Tzvaot lives, before whom I stand, I will present myself to him today. He obeyed and went, found Achav and told him, and Achav went to meet me. When Achav saw me, Achav said with malice in his voice, Is it really you, you troubler of Israel? The reason he called me that is because I was partly to blame for Israel's famine. The reason I was fasting was to withhold rain from Israel. And in turn a famine started because Israel forgot Adonai and his commandments. That's why at the very beginning of the story I said, As Adonai, the God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, there will be neither rain nor dew in the years ahead, unless I say so. Anyway, with a snarky comeback I answered Achav, I haven't troubled Israel, you have, you and your father's house, by abandoning Adonai's mitzvot and following the Baalim. Raising my voice, I followed up saying, Now order all Israel to assemble before me on Mount Carmel, along with the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of the Asherah who eat at Isabel's table. Achav sent word to all the people of Israel and assembled the prophets together on Mount Carmel. The air was thick with anticipation as I stepped forward before the gathered crowd, my heart pounding in my chest. I looked out at the sea of faces, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. How long are you going to jump back and forth between 2 positions? I cried out. my voice echoing off the mountains. If Adonai is God, follow him. But if it's Baal, follow him. A tense silence followed, the people answering me not a word. I continued, my voice filled with confidence, alone in Adonai. I alone am the only prophet of Adonai who is left, while Baal's prophets, number 450, let them give us 2 young bulls, and they can choose the bull they want for themselves. Then let them cut it in pieces and lay it on the wood, but put no fire under it. I will prepare the other bull, lay it on the wood, and put no fire under it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of Adonai, and the God who answers with fire, let him be God. The people, sensing the gravity of the challenge, responded with a murmur of agreement. Good idea. Agreed. Turning to the prophets of Baal, I said, choose 1 bull for yourselves and prepare it first, because there are many of you. Then call on the name of your God, but put no fire under it. They took the bull that was given to them, prepared it, and began their frantic pleas. From morning till noon, they cried out, Baal, answer us! But no voice was heard. No one answered. Desperation etched on their faces. They jumped around the altar they had made, their voices growing hoarse. Hours passed, and still nothing happened. Around noon, I couldn't contain my amusement any longer and said to them, shout louder. After all, he's a god, isn't he? Maybe he's daydreaming, or he's on the potty, or he's away on a trip. Maybe he's asleep, and you have to wake him up. Their desperation intensified as they shouted louder and cut themselves with swords and knives, their blood mingling with the dust as they tried to summon their god. The sight was both pitiful and horrifying. By now, it was afternoon, and they continued their frantic ranting and raving until it was time for the evening offering. But no voice came, no one answered, no one paid any attention. Their efforts had been in vain. Finally, I stepped forward, my voice calm but resolute, come here to me. The people, exhausted and desperate, gathered around as I set about repairing the altar of Adonai that had been broken down. With deliberate care, I took 12 stones, in keeping with the number of tribes of the sons of Yaakov, to whom the word of Adonai had come, saying, your name is to be Israel. With the stones, I built an altar in the name of Adonai. Then I dug a trench around the altar large enough for half a bushel of grain. I arranged the wood, cut up the bull, and laid it on the wood, my confidence in Adonai unwavering. I then said, fill 4 pots with water, and pour it on the burnt offering and on the wood. They did it 3 times as I instructed, until the water flowed around the altar and filled the trench. As the time for the evening offering approached, I stood before the altar, my heart swelling with faith. I raised my voice and prayed, Adonai, God of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Hear me, Adonai, hear me, so that this people may know that you, Adonai, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back to you. In an instant, the fire of Adonai fell from heaven. It consumed the burnt offering, the wood, the stones, and the dust. It even evaporated all the water in the trench. The sheer power and majesty of the display left the people in awe. They fell to their knees, then onto their faces, crying out, Adonai is God! Adonai is God! Seizing the moment, I commanded, seize the prophets of Baal! Don't let one of them escape. The people, now emboldened by the divine miracle, seized them, and I led them down to Wadi Kishon and killed them there, ensuring the eradication of their false prophets and the restoration of Adonai's honor. Then I said to a trembling Achav, get up, eat and drink, because I hear the sound of heavy rain. Achav quickly went up to eat and drink, while I went up to the top of Mount Carmel. I bowed down to the ground and put my face between my knees. Now, I said to my servant, go up and look out toward the sea. He went up, looked, and said, there's nothing there. 7 times I said, go again. The 7th time, the servant said, now there's a cloud coming up out of the sea. no bigger than a man's hand. I said, "Go up and say to Achshav, 'Prepare your chariot and get down the mountain before the rain stops you.'" A little later, I could feel the storm coming that I said would. The sky grew black with clouds and wind, and heavy rain began falling as Achshav, riding in his chariot, made for Yisrael. The hand of Adonai was on me. I tucked my clothing and ran ahead of Achshav to the entrance of Yisrael. Achshav told Isabel everything I had done and how I had put all the prophets to the sword. Her fury could be felt by the people around her. She wasted no time in sending a messenger to me. The words he delivered sent a chill down my spine. "May the gods do terrible things to me, and worse ones besides, if by this time tomorrow I haven't taken your life, just as you took theirs." Terror gripped my heart. I knew she killed hundreds of prophets of Adonai, so I knew she would kill me without hesitation. Seeing the threat, I immediately got up and fled for my life. My mind raced with fear and confusion, my steps fueled by sheer survival instinct. When I finally arrived in Beersheba in Yehuda, I was exhausted. I left my faithful servant there, unable to burden him with my desperate flight. But my journey wasn't over. I pushed myself a day farther into the unforgiving desert, my strength waning with each step. Eventually, I collapsed under a broom tree, the desolation of the wilderness mirroring my own soul. In utter despair, I prayed for death. "Enough!" I cried out, my voice breaking with sorrow. "Now, Adonai, take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors." The weight of the situation pressed heavily on me, and I longed for release. Laying down under the broom tree, I succumbed to exhaustion and fell asleep. Suddenly, a gentle touch roused me. An angel stood before me, his presence both comforting and commanding. "Get up and eat," he said. I looked around and saw, to my amazement, a cake baked on hot stones and a jug of water by my head. The sight of this miraculous provision brought tears to my eyes. I ate and drank, feeling a glimmer of strength returning, then lay down again, overwhelmed by fatigue. The angel returned a second time, touching me gently. "Get up and eat, or the journey will be too much for you," he urged. His words filled me with a renewed sense of purpose. I got up, ate, and drank, feeling the sustenance invigorate me. Strengthened by that miraculous meal, I traveled for 40 days and nights, each step guided by a newfound resolve, until I reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There, I went into a cave and spent the night, my heart heavy with fear and exhaustion. The darkness around me mirrored the turmoil within. Then, the word of Adonai came to me. He said, "What are you doing here, Eliyahu?" Pouring out my anguish, I answered, "I have been very zealous for Adonai, the God of armies, because the people of Israel have abandoned your covenant, broken down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. Now I'm the only one left, and they're coming after me to kill me too." The weight of my loneliness and the relentless pursuit of my enemies pressed down on me like a heavy burden. He said, "Go outside and stand on the mountain before Adonai." Trembling, I obeyed, stepping into the open air. Right then and there, Adonai went past. A mighty blast of wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks into pieces before Adonai, but Adonai was not in the wind. The sheer force of the wind left me shaken, but there was more to come. After the wind came a violent earthquake, the ground beneath me shaking with terrifying power. But Adonai was not in the earthquake. I clung to the rocky wall, my heart pounding in my chest. After the earthquake, fire broke out, fierce and consuming, but Adonai was not in the fire. The heat was intense, and I shielded myself from the flames. And after the fire came a quiet, subdued voice. It was in this stillness that I felt the true presence of Adonai. When I heard it, I covered my face with my cloak, overcome with reverence and awe, and stepped out to stand at the entrance to the cave. You see, Adonai was trying to convey to me that he can do anything and protect anyone. No one is above him. Also, the fact that I should fear him and fear what he can do, and not some old lady that wanted to kill me. Then the voice came to me again, gentle yet powerful. "What are you doing here, Eliyahu?" My heart skipped a beat as I repeated, "I have been very zealous for Adonai, the God of armies. Because the people of Israel have abandoned your covenant, broken down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. Now I'm the only one left, and they're after me to kill me too." Adonai then gave me new purpose and direction. "Go back by way of the Damasek desert. When you get there, anoint Hazael to be king over Aram. Also anoint Jehu, the son of Nimshi, to be king over Israel, and anoint Elisha, the son of Shaphat of Aval-Machola, to be prophet after you. Jehu will kill whoever escapes the sword of Hazael, and Elisha will kill whoever escapes the sword of Jehu. Still, I will spare 7,000 in Israel, every knee that hasn't bent down before Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him." With a renewed sense of purpose, I left and found Elisha the son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen. He himself was behind the 12th. I went over to him and threw my cloak on him, a symbolic act that filled me with a mix of hope and sorrow. He left the oxen, ran after me and said, "Please let me kiss my father and mother goodbye. Then I will follow you." Understanding his need to say farewell, I answered, "Go, but return, because of what I did to you." Elisha stopped following me momentarily. Then, in a powerful gesture of commitment, he took the yoke of oxen, slaughtered them, cooked their meat over the wooden yokes of the oxen, and gave it to the people to eat. Then he got up, went after me, and became my servant. Together, we set out to fulfill our purpose from Adonai. After Achav's death, Moab rebelled against Israel. When the former king of Israel's son, Achaziah, fell through a latticed window of his upper room in Shomron, he lay in tremendous pain and agony. Every movement sent waves of excruciating pain through his body, and despair filled his heart. Desperate for answers, he sent messengers and said to them, "Go, consult Baal-Zevuv, the god of Ekron, and ask whether I will recover from this injury." As the messengers departed, an angel of Adonai came to me in Tishbe, his voice urgent and commanding, "Get up and intercept the messengers of the king of Shomron. Ask them, is it because there's no God in Israel that you're on your way to consult Baal-Zevuv, the god of Ekron? Therefore, Adonai says, you will never leave the bed you are lying on. You will certainly die." I left eagerly to fulfill Adonai's command. When I intercepted the messengers and delivered Adonai's proclamation, the shock and fear in their eyes were unmistakable. They hurried back to Achaziah, their hearts pounding with dread. When they returned to the king, he asked them, "Why have you come back so soon?" They answered him, their voices trembling, "A man came to meet us. He told us to go and return to the king who sent us and tell him, 'Here is what Adonai says. Is it because there's no God in Israel that you're sending to consult Baal-Zevuv, the god of Ekron? Therefore you will never leave the bed you are lying on. You will certainly die.'" Achaziah's eyes widened in alarm. "The man who came to meet you and told you these things, what kind of a man was he?" he demanded. "He was a hairy man," they answered, "with a leather belt around his waist." Recognition flashed across Achaziah's face. "It was Eliyahu from Tishbe," he said, his voice filled with a mix of fear and anger. More determined than ever to kill me, the king sent a commander of 50 men to me. As I sat at the top of a hill, I saw them approach. The commander climbed up to me and said, "Man of God, the king says to come down." His tone was commanding, and I felt the arrogance in his words. I answered the commander of 50, "If I am, in fact, a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and burn you up, along with your 50 men." No sooner had I spoken, fire fell from heaven, consuming the commander and his men in an instant. Undeterred, the king sent another commander with 50 men. His approach was even more forceful. "Man of God," the king says, "come down immediately," he demanded. I replied with the same words, and again fire from heaven consumed them all. The king sent a third commander, but this one was different. As he climbed up and approached me, he fell on his knees, his voice trembling with fear and respect. Man of God, please, have some regard for my life and the lives of these 50 servants of yours. I know that fire came down from heaven and burned up the 2 other commanders with their 50 men, but now have some regard for my life." His plea was sincere and desperate. Then angel of Adonai then said to me, "Go down with him. Don't be afraid of him." So I got up and went down with him to the king. Standing before the king, I delivered Adonai's final judgment. Here is what Adonai says: "You sent messengers to consult Baal-Zvuv, the god of Ekron. Is it because there is no God in Israel you can consult? Therefore, you will never leave the bed you are lying on. You will certainly die." Achaziah's face paled as he realized the inevitability of his fate. So he died, in keeping with the word of Adonai spoken through me. Jehoram began to rule in his place during the 2nd year of Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Yehuda, because he had no son. The weight of these events lingered heavily in Israel, a testament to the power and justice of Adonai. Other activities of Achaziah are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. The time for Adonai to take me up into heaven in a whirlwind was drawing near. Elisha and I were on our way from Gilgal when I turned to him, my heart heavy with the knowledge of our impending separation. "Please wait here," I said to Elisha, "because Adonai has sent me all the way to Beit El." But Elisha's voice was resolute, his eyes filled with determination and devotion. "As Adonai lives, and as you live, I will not leave you." So we went down to Beit El together. When we arrived, the guild prophets of Beit El came out to Elisha, their faces somber. "Do you know that Adonai is taking your master away from you today?" they asked. Pain flickered across Elisha's face, but he replied, "Yes, I know. Say no more." I felt the weight of the moment and said to him again, "Elisha, please wait here, because Adonai has sent me to Jericho." His response was unwavering. "As Adonai lives, and as you live, I will not leave you." So we continued to Jericho. At Jericho, the guild prophets approached Elisha, echoing the same somber message. "Do you know that Adonai is taking your master away from you today?" Elisha, his voice strained with emotion, answered, "Yes, I know. Say no more." I said to him once more, "Please wait here, because Adonai has sent me to the Yarden." But again he replied with steadfast loyalty, "As Adonai lives, and as you live, I will not leave you." So the 2 of us went on, our bond unbroken. 50 of the guild prophets stood watching us from a distance as we reached the Yarden. I took my cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water with it. The water divided to the left and to the right, and we crossed on dry ground. After we had crossed, I turned to Elisha, my heart aching with the knowledge of our parting. "Tell me what I can do for you before I am taken away from you." Elisha, his eyes filled with longing, said, "Please, let a double share of your spirit be on me." His request was bold, and I felt a mix of pride and sadness. "You have requested a hard thing," I replied. "Nevertheless, if you see me when I am taken from you, you will get what you asked for. But if not, you won't." As we walked on and talked, suddenly a fiery chariot with horses of fire appeared, separating the 2 of us. I was lifted up into heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha's cry echoed in my ears, filled with anguish and admiration. My father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel!" Then I was gone from his sight. Elisha, overcome with grief, seized his clothes and tore them in half. He picked up my cloak, which had fallen from me during the miraculous event. Standing on the bank of the Yarden, he took the cloak, struck the water, and cried out, "Where is Adonai, the God of Eliyahu?" As he struck the water, it divided to the left and to the right, and Elisha crossed over, the Spirit of Adonai now resting upon him. When the guild prophets of Jericho saw him from a distance, they recognized the change. "The spirit of Eliyahu does rest on Elisha," they said. Advancing to meet him, they prostrated themselves on the ground before him. "Here now, your servants include 50 strong men," which is ironic because 50 men 3 times tried to kill me. But nonetheless, they continued to talk to Elisha, saying, "Please let them go and look for your master, in the event that the Spirit of Adonai has taken him up and set him down on some mountain or in some valley." Elisha, still mourning, answered, "Don't send them." But they kept pressing him until finally, embarrassed, he said to send them. So they sent 50 men. For 3 days they searched, but they didn't find me. When they returned to him where he was waiting in Jericho, he said to them, "I told you not to go, didn't I?" The men of the city then approached Elisha with a plea. "My lord can see that this is a pleasant city to live in, but the water is bad, so that the ground is causing miscarriages. Bring me a new jug," he said, "and put salt in it." They brought it to him. He went out to the source of the water, threw salt into it, and declared, "This is what Adonai says. I have healed this water. It will no longer cause death or miscarrying." The water was healed and has remained healed to this day, in keeping with Elisha's spoken word. Elisha left to go up to Bethel. As he was on his way up the road, some boys came out of the town and began mocking him. "Go on up, Baldy! Go on up, Baldy!" He looked behind him, saw them, and put a curse on them in the name of Adonai. Suddenly, 2 female bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the boys. He went on from there to Mount Carmel and then returned to Shomron, carrying the weight of his new role and the legacy of Eliyahu and the Spirit of Adonai with him. If you would like to grow closer to God, don't forget to spend time with him and subscribe. God bless.